Okay, I think we're ready. Oops, that's not the right one. Hang on. That's not the right scene. Let me try this again. Yay, here we go. Here I am. Hello. Hello and good morning. This is a live stream for DGST 101, probably the last live stream for DGST 101, the summer 22 version of the course. I am the professor, as always, and like I said, for the last time. So if you are watching, you're probably in my class, but if you're not, then you're welcome to watch anyway. And if you are, well, hopefully everyone in my class watches this at some point, either live or after the fact, after I upload it. So today, this is really the only live stream for the week. And like I said, I really just want to, well, like I said in the announcement or the notice this morning, I really just want to wrap things up for the week. I want to kind of tell you what's going on, what you need to do, and help you think about and think through some things as you wrap up this term. All right, so the thing I have here is a slideshow, and this slideshow has lots of points and content on it. So I'm going to share the slideshow in a couple places. I'll put it in the Twitch chat in case you're watching there. Here's my slideshow for today. Oops, that's a check mark. I had the wrong thing on my clipboard. Oops, hang on. Let me try that again. Can I not delete my own comments? I can delete other people's comments, but not anyone else's. Okay, that's weird. But let me try to share this again. I'm just going in here to hit the share thing, and anyone with the link can view, right? All right. Well, I guess I just copied the main URL, right? Okay. Try this. So there's that, and then I'll put it in the live stream chat channel, although people don't use this channel very much in Discord, but I'll put it in here anyway. Here's my slides for today. And as always, if you're watching, you can watch or you can chat in the Twitch chat, and I will see those, or the Discord. If you happen to be watching on YouTube live, I can't see those comments live. I can, in fact, I don't even know if I can see them after the fact. I don't know how that works. So I usually just upload the video directly there. So I don't interact with whatever version of the live stream YouTube presents me with. Anyway, here we are, week 5. So here's what I want to cover today. I want to talk about the mediated metacognitive meditation, which is a silly name for the final assignment for this class, but I want to talk about it. Also want to, because meditation is part of this, or that, thinking, reflection, I want to do a little bit of thinking and reflection about the term as a whole, the previous 4 weeks, and then give you some final advice about WordPress if you're using WordPress, and then talk about how I'd like for you to propose your final grade for the class. So hopefully pretty straightforward. I've got a lot of notes and things in here, but let's take a look at a few things just to get started with here. The mediated metacognitive meditation. It's hard to say, but it's alliterative, and I like alliteration in assignments whenever I can do that. This one is a little bit convoluted though, so let me explain the pieces of this a bit, and hopefully this makes sense. So meditation just means reflection. So I'm asking you to reflect. I'm asking you to think back. And specifically, I'm interested in you thinking about what and how you learned. So cognitive, stands for cognition. Metacognition, cognitive is related to cognition, which is thinking, and then metacognition is thinking about thinking. And so here I'm just suggesting that you need to think about how you learned things this semester. This term. Ultimately, what I'm interested in for this, and a big theme that I hope you take away from today's talk, is that I'm not necessarily interested in you reaching a specific level of competence or expertise even with any of the tools or conversations that we've had this term. Instead, I'm interested in progress. I'm interested in how you started from, how you moved from wherever you started to wherever you see yourself now. And that process of how you kind of move up that ladder, if we want to think of it hierarchically, which we don't necessarily, but that's an easy way to think of it. How you moved, that's what I'm interested in you paying attention to and really taking away from this class, is the ability to recognize, notice how to learn how to learn these things. So that's what I'm interested in here, and that's why I use the term metacognitive. And then mediated just means I want you to use some form of media. So if you think back to the creativity module, that had different kinds of things you could create. You could think of something like that, like a set of animated GIFs, or interactive game, or a video, or digital audio piece, like lots of different possibilities. I'm not going to direct one. I'm just saying use some form of media as you do this final thing, and that final thing should include metacognition and reflection. Okay, so a bit more. Let me break this down into the specific components of this this mediated metacognitive meditation. I do want you to iterate. So in other words, I want you to think back on the things you've already done and do something else with them. So not all of them necessarily, but some of them. I want you to go back to them and look at my feedback in the videos, which I'm almost caught up on that. I have, I think, 3 more to do. But if so see what I've suggested in those, see if there's something where, like, especially if you get a check minus on something, that's my signal to you that something is missing or unsatisfactory. So that seems like a good starting point if you're thinking about projects that you could do more with. And hopefully it's clear what you could do. If not, of course, as always, please ask. But the other way to think about this iteration is, not necessarily in terms of what you think I want from it, but what do you want from it? Like, what would be a more successful project just in your eyes and in your sense of what's important? So that should always supersede whatever you think I'm looking for as you approach these. Okay, and this is also kind of expressing the same idea. I want you to see that. I want to see your thought process. Like, I want to understand how you got to that decision about which things to iterate, how you overcame challenges, or how you just faced challenges. Overcoming isn't necessarily a given. Like, if you face a challenge, you struggle against it for a while, that's an interesting process, and that's something you could reflect on in your final project. As I say here, failure is okay. Failure can be a tremendous learning opportunity. So I'm not going to dismiss failure. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to, well, I don't know. I don't want to say that phrase exactly because that could be misunderstood. I almost said I want to encourage you to fail. I don't really, but I mean, certainly I want you to pass the class, obviously. But I also want you to understand that failure in terms of a digital project isn't necessarily the end of learning. Like, that is often the beginning of learning. That's something that you can learn from quite a bit. And then finally, I do want you to share this. So, there's lots of options for sharing things. I've got some suggestions written here. These paragraphs, by the way, are taken directly from the assignment page in Canvas. But, you've done videos, and some of those videos have been you talking to a camera. Some of them have been recording a screencast. Some of them have just been recording audio. So here's an opportunity to do more with that kind of media. So instead of just recording yourself talking in one take, maybe write a script and record several different statements and then edit them together in an interesting way, or maybe do some kind of sound design or add music to your audio if you want to do that. Maybe do a different kind of creative work than what you did before. So maybe if you made something with digital audio in the first creativity module, maybe now make some kind of interactive Twine essay explaining how you think you've progressed in this class. I mean, there's lots of different options here. I'm very open-minded in terms of the kind of thing that you create here, like what media, whatever form it takes. But what I really want to insist on is that it shows some sense of reflection, and that part of what you're reflecting on is how you have iterated or expanded on at least 3 of your projects or earlier work from this semester. Okay, so it's all these 3 things together. Okay, so, but, this being so open-ended, sometimes, students worry about, like, what is he actually asking for? And I there's no secret way to do this that I'm not telling you. Like, there's really just a lot of options, and I accept all these options. I am much more open-minded in this final project than you might think, and certainly more open-minded than earlier projects even. Okay, so let's think about where we've been so far, how we got here this semester. I want to look back a bit. I keep saying semester, but technically this is a term, because a semester is half of a year, and this has not been half of a year. This has been a tiny portion of a year, and we've done a lot over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I want to talk about some highlights from those. Okay, so way back in week 1, I've broken each week down in terms of what I think you should have learned and what you should have done. These are just the highlights. There's a few other things and details for this. For all of these, by the way, I would recommend, as you're thinking back on this course, go back. Sorry, I just saw something weird here. Like, I don't know, do you see this, like, streak on this? What is that? That's weird. Okay, I thought it was a scratch on my monitor, but it's actually part of this placeholder image that I don't. Okay, anyway, sorry, I get distracted so easily. Looking back, what I was trying to say was go back to the homepage for our Canvas course. Everything is now filled in week by week, day by day. Some day, like day 4 of last week, didn't have any notes associated with it, but they're all in here. There's probably a couple more days I need to go in and embed the YouTube video. I don't think I did it for the last couple of days last week. But yeah, they're all there, either embedded here, but definitely available on my YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/ZachWhalen, that's how you spell my name. I've got a playlist here. Oh no, this is me live right now. I've got a playlist right here, and this is all of, you can navigate the playlist over here. This is each day of this week, or of this term. When I've streamed, I've got the video up here, and you can click through it. For the last few of them, I've also done like chapter by chapter labels. So like you can click on different things if you're looking for a specific task, right? But for the most part, everything is kind of just here, so it's there to be discovered. I know that's a lot. I mean, that's probably 15, 16 hours of content. I don't expect you to watch all of that again, but if you're looking for something specific, of course, there's a good chance I covered it in there, and if not, if nothing else, it's written in the notes for whichever, for each of these days, day by day, right? So here's the beginning of week 3, for example. So there's a lot there to go back into. Anyway, the point is, for week 1, I was hoping that you learned a bit about how the web worked. And by the web, I mean having a domain and putting content on the domain and understanding that that's a space on the web that you have access to. I wanted you to understand how that idea of the web came about. And I gave you just one of several possible prehistorical, I guess, origin stories of that kind of thinking. That was Vannevar Bush's essay, As We May Think, and it's an influential essay. I think it's got some issues, obviously, as we talked about in perusal, but it's definitely noteworthy. Lots of people know this essay and talk about it, and what I like about it is the way he articulates a different way of organizing information, and that way of organizing information is what we see realized in the web and also realized in specific projects that depend on the web, like Wikipedia. So I think there's an intellectual history there that's important and interesting to look at. And what I wanted you to see is that creating a domain is entering into that kind of knowledge space, that kind of informational structure. So that's what I hope you got away from that week. In terms of things you did, you probably, I think almost all of you registered for a domain for the first time, or if not, you already had one and you hadn't used it much before. Most of you installed WordPress and started posting, and at least one of you didn't. You already had WordPress. Another one of you did something else entirely, which is great. But you have some way of posting content on your website, and that's a significant accomplishment. So you did that. You also interacted with your peers in Discord. Some of you are new to Discord, so that required some learning, and you had to get the hang of that. So that was also something hopefully that happened in week 1. And Perusal is also a new platform for most of you, so you had to figure out how to navigate that and how to interact with each other on that platform. And then in terms of the creativity module, you either created some GIFs, or maybe you created some interactive fiction, or maybe you created some digital audio, but you did one of those 3, or maybe multiple ones, and shared that on your domain. So you did quite a lot in week 1, really every week, but those are the main things that I recall from week 1. For week 2, this is when we talked about web literacy, and web literacy is the overarching concept, but the habits and practices of web literacy and skills related to web literacy are things that we developed, that you practiced. So I hope that you learned a bit about how misinformation and disinformation circulates on digital platforms, I guess how and why. And I also hope you learned how to do the fact checking, like how to fact check suspicious or dubious content. And there are some specific approaches to that you may not have ever used before or heard about before, like reverse image search, like using the advanced queries in a search engine to filter out content from specific domains, or like the reading laterally technique of looking for other websites to learn about the reputation of a particular website. I hope you learned how to do that, and you demonstrated that by practicing it and sharing that practice in Discord. And then the main thing, of course, that you produced this week was the web literacy article. That's the fact-checking document, and I call it the web literacy article. It's really a fact-checking document where you investigated a claim and tried to find the right answer for that, and tried to share those findings in that form. So that was the main work of that week. You also looked at each other's articles and helped improve them, and you also did completed a digital culture module on your own. So you learned about some other area independently, and you discussed and shared those results in Discord, hopefully. But certainly on your blog. I was hoping I was going to be done with my cough today. I'm not, apparently. Okay. Week 3. So week 3, in this week, I hope you learned, and this one had a lot of content to get through for you to, learning content, right? So hopefully you learned about the life cycle of digital artifacts by playing the game Phone Story. Hopefully you learned about human rights abuses, alleged in some cases and actual in others, documented in others, at the level of mineral extraction and manufacturing for modern technological devices. And then also, hopefully learned about the environmental impact of e-waste. I think I forgot to add a bullet point for this, but a sort of hidden learning outcome or thing that I hope you took away from week 3 had to do with how different media communicates content, right? So Phone Story introduces ideas to you, but you experience those ideas ludically, like through play. And so you play different scenarios, and by playing, you learn something about them. In several cases, really all of them, you kind of have to play the bad guy, like you have to do the wrong thing, and that's the only way to progress through the game. The game makers are very explicit about their what's called procedural rhetoric. They make it very clear that you have to do this, and if you try not to, right, if you fail at a particular level, or if you do it on purpose or accidentally, the phone will talk to you and say, don't pretend you're not complicit. In other words, it'll say, you're already doing this. I'm just trying to show you what you're doing, and you have to kind of play through it. So it's a very chilling and cynical kind of message, but I think it's one that's important to hear. But really what's happening there is you're learning through misaligning your game goals with your ethical goals. Like you understand that this is the wrong thing to do, but you have to see the implications of that wrong action, that ethically wrong action, in order to understand it. So that's an example of procedural rhetoric. But we also, you hopefully experienced how, I hope you listened to the interview with Mike Daisey and how awkward and uncomfortable that is. So we hear how audio can be used to create a sense of a scene and meaning and help us feel really feel something. Using the techniques of editing to accomplish that. And then finally, looking at the environmental impact of e-waste, we look at 2 very different video texts. One was a straightforward kind of news document, and the other one was a really emotionally impactful, just documentation of people working with e-waste. And the latter, I think, was a lot more effective. Affective, like as opposed to effective. In other words, it pulls on your emotions, and it it works really well, and in part because of how little commentary it provides. It just sort of lets you see what's happening, and you have to draw your own conclusions, and those conclusions, I think, are pretty disturbing. So that's hopefully a lot of what you learned, but you also produced something that was pretty intensive as well that week. So this is week 3, and week 3 really kind of has a lot going on to it, I guess. So you hopefully learned about the origins, uses, and potential afterlives of some digital object, and then completed a interactive timeline using Timeline.js that required you to navigate the Timeline.js software. It also, get that to work, troubleshooting, debugging as necessary, and taking advantage of its affordances and working around its weaknesses. That's what we do whenever we work with platforms. We lean into what they're good at and find ways to avoid what they're not good at. And that's part of what I hope you accomplished and experienced with Timeline.js. Of course, you had to have something to say, so you researched a specific object as well. Okay, so then almost finally, week 4, this is methodology. So your goal was to learn about how computational tools can ask questions and explore solutions to problems. And you used HTML. You learned how to how HTML code works, and you hopefully did it. So hopefully you were able to use software to explore a question or a solution to an inquiry you had, and then hopefully you were able to hand code some HTML to create a web page that shares what you found with that. So I know I'm saying this one a little bit more tentatively because I know some of you are still working on week 4, but that's what you should be doing or have done either way for week 4, is that you are doing that inquiry and then sharing the results of that inquiry using HTML code. So you've got to learn how to code. It's really 2 things combined in one, 2 very different things really combined into one project. So hopefully that's something that's making sense and getting things together, but that's the major kind of thing there. All right, so that was an overview of the first 4 weeks. This week 5 is really just the final week. So there's, it's essentially, finals week for this term. And in terms of the schedule, right? So this is asynchronous, so it doesn't really matter. But for synchronous classes, they actually would meet today and tomorrow, and then that's it. So I'm not planning to stream tomorrow. I might if I think of something, but I'm not planning to. So this is just kind of it. We're just wrapping up. So there's no new content in week 5, in other words. So no new tasks other than the final project. Okay, so let's see. The next bit of things I wanted to talk about is thinking about things with WordPress. You've got a WordPress website, most of you, and I've been giving you all advice about WordPress whenever I've been recording my feedback videos. In some cases, I've repeated advice in multiple videos, and I still haven't seen you apply the advice. So I want to make sure one more time to give you some advice that I think will help you get the most out of your WordPress site and also operate it safely and responsibly. You have a website, you are responsible for it in a lot of important ways. So I'm going to give you some advice that I've given before, but it doesn't hurt. Sometimes it helps to give it this advice again. And of course, as always, if you have questions about any part of this, anything I've said already, or anything that I'm about to put in here, as far as WordPress or anything else, ask and I will try to answer on the stream. It's better if I can answer on the stream because then other people might have the same question and see my answer. So, okay, let's talk about coffee. Let's talk about akismet. So a question to ask. These are all, I've kind of phrased all these WordPress things as questions. So is akismet installed, activated, and set up? There's actually 3 steps to this, and if you haven't completed that final step, it's not actually working. What akismet does is it tries to block spam on your website. Maybe, if you've not done this, maybe you haven't had a lot of spam yet, but you might. And if your site gets any kind of attention or traffic, it can start getting spam, and it can start getting a lot of spam. And I say a lot, unless you have something like akismet, you have to deal with that spam yourself. And what I'm talking about are hundreds or thousands of comments posted every day on your blog that you would have to delete one at a time, or maybe 30 at a time. But even then, 30 at a time, right? It's still going to take you a while. Akismet is going to get ahead of that and block them for you. And that's very helpful. Even if you never run into that issue or never would, it's still useful to have this anyway, just in case as a safety net. So akismet is a good, almost like the first thing I do whenever I set up a new site with WordPress, or this, I guess, second thing technically. So anyway, this is really important. So if you're looking at your plugins dashboard, this is what you should see on the left. If you see the thing on the left where it has a big button saying set up your akismet account, that means you have not yet set up your akismet account. If you see it on the right, like I have here, where there's no button, and you just see the akismet there as activated, which means it's because it's got the blue background and it does not have the activated link, that means that it's active and set up. So what you want to see is what I have on the right over there. That's the ideal way it should look. Let me just show you in case you aren't sure how to find this. This is a new site that I set up earlier today, just another WordPress, and I named this one delete this, so I will remember to delete this. I'll show you what it should look like, right? So if you get here, you can tell that akismet is activated, that's the term here, because it's blue and because I have the settings link. For plugins that are not activated, you would see the link here would say activate. Let me show you what it looks like if I deactivate it. All right, so it'll probably look like this when you first install WordPress. So you do have to activate it first, right? So click the activate link, and then complete the setup process. Now it'll take you straight to this screen, which gives you this option to set up your akismet account. So you can do it directly from here, or if you do something else for a while and you come back to your plugins page, you'll see the link like I showed in that screenshot on the slides with the big button that says set up your akismet account. And as it says, you're almost done, which means you're not done. So you need to get done. And you do that by clicking this blue button. This will take you over to the akismet website, akismet.com, and it'll invite you to sign up. Now, you see the prices here. You don't have to pay for this. Go with Get Personal, drag the slider down to 0 if you don't want to pay for it, and then you still do have to enter your first and last name and the domain that you're using this on. Check these boxes to confirm that you're doing this for personal use, and then you'll continue. Eventually, it's going to give you what's called an API token. It's a long, I think it's like 12 or 16 characters long, random letters and numbers, but that's like a secret password that akismet uses to access your website and check for comments and delete them or take action on them. All right, so I'm not going to do that right now, but that's the process. You should keep going past here. I just wanted to show you the step where you can slide it to 0 in case you still needed to see that. Okay, so is akismet activated? If not, it should be. Is it set up? If not, it should be. Right. So very important advice, I think. Okay, another thing you should consider is just disabling comments entirely. Now, I still recommend having akismet active even if you've disabled comments. I think the two approaches work together well. But if you don't care to ever have comments on your website, just disable comments, and that's fine. Now, like I said, it's still a good idea to have akismet installed because there are places to leave comments on your website that you might not realize, and any little like crack in the commenting door that a spammer can find, they're gonna flood it. So what you want to do is, if you want to consider this, is you go to not comments. Like you might think, oh, I go to the comments here, but no, this is actually where you access the comments themselves. Instead, you want to go to settings and then discussion. So you can see that next to my head there. Settings and then discussion, and then you're changing your discussion settings. Comments are an aspect of discussion. And you got these three things here. I recommend, so they're all going to be checked by default, as you saw, but I'm going to uncheck them. In fact, this screenshot is incorrect, come to think of it. I wanted to uncheck that. But I'm doing it now, so this will work for you all. I'll replace the screenshot later. But you don't bother notifying other blogs. No one cares. Don't include link notifications. That's another thing people can use to spam your site. And also, don't let people comment. So if you uncheck these boxes, all three of those, that's how I do it. That's how I'd recommend you do it too if you don't care to ever have any interaction with your website. And save those changes, and you're good for future posts. Now I feel like if I want to interact with people, I'll do that on like Twitter, Facebook, or something else, and then I'll use my website to just put my content out there. And that's what I do. You could choose other things if you don't mind having comments or dealing with them or having conversations with people on your blog. Totally your choice. I just want to make sure you see how to turn this off if you choose to. So like I said, uncheck these, save those changes, and now this will affect every future post. So future posts now will not allow comments. But when you first install WordPress, you do have some sample content, and that sample content will still have comments enabled. You have to go into each of those things individually and disable them. The easiest way to do it is like I just did here. You click on the quick edit link and then just uncheck those things, and then there you go. Now if you had multiple posts, you'd have to do that for every post, but that's that's how they set it up. I do wish they had like truly global settings for that as opposed to post by post settings, but that's not what the people who made WordPress decided to do. So, oh well. Okay. Another thing, some of you were still posting, and I'm seeing your post show up as by admin, and I recommend having this be something else. It does not actually have to be your legal actual name, but something other than admin is a good idea. So I just have this is a screenshot of where to find this, of what it looks like when you change those settings. I'll do that here just to show you that in a kind of process view. You go to users. You're probably the only user on your website. And if you set it up like I did with this one, it's going to generate a username randomly, and that's obviously not useful either. So you want to click on Edit to change your profile settings, including your real information here. So you can enter your first and last name if you want to, or if there's some nickname you like to use, a screen name or something, you can just type that. You have to at least type the nickname field, and then whenever you enter values in these three fields, they will become options in this field. So you have to choose something down here after you've entered it that way. But then once you've made that choice, make sure you hit the update profile, and that will apply to every post now. Okay. So that was another bit of suggesting. Next, have you thought about changing the theme? There are thousands of themes available, and some of them I think work better than others. I just installed this WordPress, and so I think this is WordPress 6, and I have not really spent much time yet with this new thing that they have here where it says, like, you can go to appearance, and then instead of giving you customization options like I'm used to seeing, it gives you this thing, editor, and as the little red flag indicates there, this is beta. So beta software means it's still sort of in trial mode, and that means, it may not work or it may be buggy. The thing I have discovered is that I have not totally internalized or understood the workflow that they expect you to use here. It presents you with this, and basically you are editing every part of your web page sort of piece by piece, which I feel like is kind of weird. I'm not used to that. If you don't want to deal with this, then you have to pick a theme that does not have that built into it automatically. 2022 is the theme that comes with WordPress now if you install it, and 2022 does have that all that weird stuff built into it. The other two themes that are included, 2020 and 2021, do not have that. So if you don't want to deal with that weird theme editor, you can switch to either one of these. But even better, I would say, find some other theme, right? Because this is kind of like using the default settings on Microsoft Word templates. I mean, it's just sort of there. You didn't actually make any choices about how it looked. But if you find a theme, that's a choice. And so I recommend finding some other themes. And as you scroll down, you can see a bunch of them. This is the theme dashboard, I guess, and you can see they've got 4,903 available. You can look at things that are popular. You can look at I guess some of the latest ones. These are going to be a lot more varied if you look at things just by how recently they were posted. And you can see all kinds of different ways of looking and site organization. Favorites. I guess you can import favorites from the website. You can browse these on the web too, like the WordPress.org website. The thing that helps if you're looking for a particular kind of thing is you can click on feature filter and decide, okay, well, I like a grid layout and I'm trying to do this for education, and I definitely want to be able to customize the colors. So you can apply these filters, whatever your filters you want, and then it'll just show you themes that have those features. So I'll let this load for a second and then install one or two of these. Let's try. No, I don't really like any of these. These all look really corporate, but I'll do book publisher, I guess. So you can always preview and see what it looks like, and if that looks decent to you, then hit install. Now you might notice this doesn't look like the thumbnail. Like the thumbnail of the theme has this big background image. What we're seeing here is pretty generic, obviously. That's okay. You almost always will have to do some work to configure the theme to make it look like it looks in the thumbnail. And sometimes they'll explain how to do that in the theme description. Sometimes you just have to figure it out through trial and error, right? But let this run and install. Great. And then you have to both install and then activate it. So I'm going to hit activate to make this the active theme for this temporary WordPress site that I'm using. And here we go. It looks like this theme has a lot more options than I'm used to seeing. So this little this menu that's pulled out here under appearance, this is what I'm used to seeing as far as a theme customizer. They do have this kind of preview area if you customize, right? And you can do a lot from here. I usually would recommend coming in here and seeing what options they've made possible for this particular theme. And this one, they've got quite a few different things you could play with. And really, like I say, playing with it is the best way to figure out how the different theme options work. Okay, so I can give you advice about specific ones sometimes, but usually, I mean, there is some consistency between themes in terms of how they work with each other and kind of where the different tools are for customizing it, or just what the things are called. So if you're stuck on something, you can certainly ask. But for a lot of times, if it's just some random theme that you downloaded, I may not know how to fix it. I don't know what's going on with it. I got in here into the CSS for this theme, which I don't need right now. So that's, lots of things you can do with it. Okay, some other things to consider. These are not required by any means, but these are some other some plugins that I generally recommend, right? So a theme changes the way things look, and then plugins add functionality or behavior or structure of some sort to your blog. And so there's a couple that I recommend at least considering. One of them is Jetpack, and the other is WordFence. Jetpack has to do with, basically it bundles a bunch of kind of tiny useful plugins together, and if you've ever used WordPress on WordPress.com, that is a slightly different flavor of the WordPress that you install on UMW Domains or any other website that you own. But Jetpack will make that sort of local version of WordPress more similar to the WordPress.com version of WordPress. So if that's something you're used to or you like using, Jetpack could be a good thing to do. It does a couple things to speed up your website. Like if you have large images, it will use what's called a CDN to serve lower quality images first, and then let users access that without having to download as much data to their phones, for example. It also has analytics, so you can kind of see who's visiting your sites and where they came from, and a few other kind of basic things like that. It's got a bunch of options in it. I don't have it installed, and I don't feel like installing it right now, but on this theme. But I mean, okay, maybe I will. Sorry. The only thing I'm hesitating is I don't remember if I have to actually register it. I don't think I do. If I can do it without registering it, then I will. I don't want to register anything on this site because, like, I'm going to delete it in a few minutes. But if you look here, so this, if you look, this is just the plugin directory similar to the theme directory, and you want to look for themes, but you want to look for plugins that have a lot of active installations. So this one has over 5 million and a good rating, both a good rating and a lot of ratings. So it's interesting to see Gutenberg have such a low rating. That's interesting. Gutenberg is the plugin version of the block editor that was introduced before the block editor was the default in the core WordPress, and a lot of people didn't like it when it first came out. And so that's probably why that's 2 out of 5. So I'm going to try to install Jetpack here. You know, Jetpack essentially adds a whole layer of operations and options onto your website, so it's a lot to look at. And it's a lot to download as well, apparently. The other one that while that's loading, the other one I was interested in recommending is WordFence. And WordFence is, like the title and the description will suggest, it's basically a firewall for your website. So it will block attempts to hack your website. And it's kind of like the akismet thing. It's better to have it and not need it than to, get hacked. So I recommend WordFence as well. It doesn't take very much configuration. It's a freemium kind of thing, so the free version's fine, but if you want to pay for more functions, you can. But I'm okay with the free version. I've never really been tempted to upgrade. But it is nice, and it actually tells you what it's doing. So on one of my sites, actually, I've been getting a lot of hack attempts, and I don't have to do anything about it. I just am seeing these reports from WordFence saying, hey, we got so many, and I'm paraphrasing, but the report says we got so many attempts to hack your website from Brazil that we're going to block all of the IP addresses in Brazil temporarily. Like, it does stuff like that, and that's nice. So it's nice. So I don't have to deal with that. All right, so there we go. I think it was taking a minute because it was installing Jetpack in the background. But there's WordFence, the first one that comes up. There's a couple of kind of helper plugins, but really the one you need is just the main one here, which you can see with 4 million active installations, 4.5 out of 5 stars. So a good one. And while that's installed, I will. I can leave here, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna leave here. I don't think I need to do anything else. I think I just need to wait for that to be done. This is taking longer than I wanted it to. I just wanted to show you these things really quickly. Hope everyone had a good weekend and is enjoying this very summery weather. Finally feels like June. Hot and muggy today. Okay, so the plugins, right? So let's finally hopefully go here. Maybe. It's supposed to be pretty hot tomorrow. Okay, so akismet, you can see, still wants me to set it up. Let's see, there's Jetpack. So I'm going to activate Jetpack. Jetpack also has a thing where you need to log into WordPress.com to activate it. It actually is the same account that you can create with akismet. You can use that same account for both of them. But yeah, I don't want to log into anything here, so it looks like it really wants me to activate it though. I'm not gonna activate it. I'm gonna go here and see what I can see from the Jetpack dashboard. I think it's slow because of all the work I'm asking it to do at once, and it's probably maxing out the CPU on the server. Okay, here we go. So this is what I was talking about with WordPress, with Jetpack. It gives you site statistics, recommending kind of so you can see what's going on with your website, how many people are getting into it. It also will summarize the information from akismet. They're both made by the same company. Akismet and Jetpack are both made by Automatic, which is a company that makes WordPress. So it's it's all sort of connected in here and integrated in this Jetpack thing. You can also go to I'm not going to go through it. There's lots of different things you can explore in Jetpack. I've taken too much time on this, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it. But WordFence is the other one, and WordFence does have several options. They're mostly pretty self-explanatory, but basically you want to follow their recommendations, but you can do plenty without paying for it. So if you get to a point where it says you need to pay for a feature, then usually that you don't need to. I mean, well, always. I've never paid for it. Okay, so that's the last bit of recommendations with with WordPress. I've given you others kind of piece by piece throughout. I guess the final thing to say about WordPress, I'll say one more thing about WordPress. And it's not even about WordPress specifically, but anytime you're writing for the web, right? I wanted to remind you all about how to do links. And I've been commenting on this in all the feedback videos if it occurs to me, and it often does if I see it. And the that I'm talking about is a bad habit that a lot of people have when they're writing for the web, when they're new at writing for the web. And that has to do with pasting raw URLs in the middle of content. You should not do that. Instead, what you should do is, I am using WordPress. Instead, you should make make the text some part of the text you've already written. So write something, highlight it, click the link icon that pops out, and then paste the URL here. So I'm gonna just type wordpress.org, hit enter, and there we go. I'm done. That's all you need to do. You should never see http:// blah, blah, blah in the middle of a post like this. It should always be something that is a text link to something else. That's the right way to do it here on your hand-coded HTML, in a Canvas post, on a Google Doc, anywhere you're sharing links that you can. Like some contexts, they will prevent you from actually including rich links like that. But most of the time, you have the ability to make a clickable link like that, and you should. That's your responsibility as an author for the web. So please do that. If you learn nothing else from this class, I mean, that's a habit you should take away from this class. I hope you learn more than that from this class, but that is something that I hope you learn. Okay, so speaking of things you've learned from this class, let's talk about how to propose your final grade. This is the thing that you're going to be doing after you've completed the MMM, Mediated Metacognitive Meditation. After you've done that, then you should propose your final grade. This is something that's going to be similar to the weekly reflection and reports, but this is the final reflection and report. In fact, I changed the name of the assignment this morning, just to make that even more clear, that this is the final reflection and report. So you should do this last. This should be the last thing you do. And like the other reflection reports, you can record yourself talking, you can write something. In this one, I'm not really worried at all about the container for your ideas, like how you choose to record and share them. I am with the MMM, but with this, whatever works for you. Do what you did before, totally fine. But now, instead of thinking about what you did this week, I want you to think about everything you've done this whole term. And I want you to be as specific as possible, both about the things you did and what you learned from them. So let me give you some advice about how to do that. Okay, so this class, like every class really, has what we call learning outcomes. And this one is a class where I've got 4 learning outcomes. These are expressed in a kind of education-ese, where they're kind of, convoluted, but I hope I can explain them here. Essentially, this one has to do with digital creativity. So this one has to do with expressing yourself using digital tools. And that could include different kinds of things. But the big key here is that you're using the right tool for the kind of thing you're trying to get across. So think about how Phone Story used procedural rhetoric to get across some ideas using a video game. So it has particular things that are specific to video games that game designer, Paolo Pedersini, wanted to do. And so he used those tools, and he used them, I think, really well. So think about, that's what we call affordances in media studies. So that's the idea that I want you to get across. That's what I wanted you to get from the different kinds of creativity that you explored. I wanted you to develop those skills. In this case, this one is digital methodology. So it's understanding how new ideas can be formed and new problems can be solved and new questions can be answered using digital tools to explore those ideas, answer those questions, solve those problems, right? So this is digital methodology. And then the final one is, and I don't know why these are out of order compared to how I do it in the syllabus, but anyway, the digital culture, that's what this is about. So I want you to understand, I hope that you understand now some more about the social, ethical, philosophical, and technological issues around the technology that we use. So that has to do with communities of practice that has to do with technological histories and philosophical backgrounds, but it's the sort of context stuff. And then finally, all of this should be built around and helping to support an idea of your digital identity. So that's basically your domain. So let me break these all down in a little bit more detail. For each of these learning outcomes, we can think of this in terms of different criteria that express different levels of achievement or a progress with each of these. So for each of these, what I've got in these slides here is I've got a 4-point breakdown, kind of rough, right? And it's certainly debatable and fluid and not meant to be hard delineations of achievement, but just to give you a sense of a framework. I wanted to give you a sense of what I think of as exceeding expectations in this learning outcome, meeting expectations, needing development, or falling below expectations. So these are the kind of the 4-level rubric here. So those terms should be swapped. Anyway, we'll keep it as it is. So my idea is that I've got pretty specific language here about different kinds of accomplishment with each of these. And my hope and what I want to hear about in your final reflection and report is kind of where were you on this, if you think of it as a scale, where were you on the scale to begin with in this semester and where are you now? In other words, how have you made progress? And I think that can be a really compelling way to argue for a successful grade, is to say, when this class started, I was definitely below expectations, but now I'm meeting expectations. I would say more than that, but that language, that idea of development is what I'm interested in. And so if you can be specific about it, right? So you could say, I was below expectations because I had no idea how to use any kind of software, but now I made, 10 animated GIFs. And so that's an example of how I am now exceeding expectations in this particular learning outcome. That would be a great argument. That would be a great discussion to have in your final report. Okay, I'm not going to go through each of these bullet by bullet because I've shared this and I'll put it in the notes for today too, but it's in Discord. But basically, you notice how the highest level, you're working with software and you're doing things that are surprising, innovative, and effective. Like you're doing things that work, that are really contributing something new to the conversation. Whereas below expectations, you're not even really sure where to start. You don't know where to find the software or even when you would need software to do something creative. Okay, so let's take a look at some more. So looking at knowledge production, this is the digital methodology one. So this is where you are, like the assignment asked you to do this week. You're using digital methodology to answer previously unanswered questions or explore new solutions to problems. So here, novelty is kind of what distinguishes this between exceeding versus meeting. Like if you're really solving problems that haven't been solved yet, that would definitely be exceeding expectations, right? I mean, or contributing new ideas or new thinking to the field. Like that would be great. Whereas below expectations would be you have no idea kind of what digital methods are or what they could be used for. Kind of similar to the first one. So if you started at below expectations and you feel like you've moved up, then, great. Please talk about how you did that and what specific things you learned and how you applied them. Okay, and then this is the digital culture one. And this one is a little bit more specific. So if you think let's start with below expectations. Here it's like you use social media, you participate in online communities, but you have no real awareness of those communities' social or ethical contexts. Maybe as you start to think more about their technological infrastructure, that's kind of a good starting point or a good place to develop. But then by the time you're meeting expectations here, you are aware of some of the issues and problems in that culture related to their technological infrastructure or their social or ethical contexts. And then finally, at the highest level, you're demonstrating and expressing a well-informed point of view about those issues. So you understand kind of what the problems are and maybe have ideas about what we should do about it. Like that would be the sort of exceeding expectations there. Okay, and then finally, promoting the active identity. And so this is where you are, below expectations would be you have no idea how to start making a website, you don't have one. Whereas at the exceeding point, you are, you're using domain well. You're developing unique voice, you're sharing your ideas, you are being thoughtful, as you see under meeting expectations, you're being thoughtful about how you navigate public and private audiences. That's something that takes some practice and some experience with to have a sophisticated sense of that balance. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And like all the other ones, if you can say at the beginning of this class, I had a website, but I never used it, that would be like needs development. Now, if you're using it well, then you can say, now I'm exceeding expectations with that. Okay, so this is all, I'm trying to give you language to use and structure to use for this final grade proposal, right? It is a proposal, it's an argument, it's something where you are trying to be persuasive and you're trying to use evidence. So the information on the previous slides is going to be your evidence. And if you sum it all together, here's a suggestion. So this is an A, B, C, D. I assume none of you are going to argue for an F, so I've just given you ideas of how you might articulate a rationale for an A, B, C, and D. And you'll notice a few things here. Hopefully for an A or a B, I'm assuming that you would say that you completed all the assignments. For a C, you might say you completed most of the assignments, and for a D, you might say you completed some of the assignments. So what I'm saying here is, like, I acknowledge that maybe you didn't complete everything. You can still pass the class, but you still need to be able to explain what you learned, even if you didn't complete all the assignments. Okay, and you can see how this breaks things down a little bit more. I've just kind of penciled, by the way, feel free to make a different rubric entirely. Like, feel free to express these differences differently, right? I'm just trying to give you something to start with and a framework for those of you who have no idea where to start. But if you already have an idea and you're ready to make your case, then go for it. But what I'm suggesting for an A is that you are meeting or exceeding expectations on all of the learning outcomes, all 4 learning outcomes, and you can describe how you made progress on each of those, like how you got there. For the B, you're at least meeting on at least 3 out of those 4, and you can describe progress. For the C, you are able to talk about progress, and the D. But for the C and the D, it's a difference of how many of the assignments you completed, basically. Okay, so that's it, right? And like I said, you can modify this, you can think of this differently, but this to me makes sense in terms of my goals for you, and so I hope it's helpful for you to think through your learning. That's ultimately what I'm interested in. And that's the end of my slideshow. So, yeah, it's almost been an hour. That's about a typical time for me. Right, so this is probably my last live stream for the term. If I do decide to stream tomorrow, I don't know what I'll cover, but if I think of something, I might. I'll let you know via Discord if I decide to stream tomorrow. I also, by the way, do use this Twitch channel for other things. So if you followed me because you're a student in this class, you may have done that, so you would see the notifications when I go live. Just know that I will. You may see me go live for reasons totally unrelated to class. So you're, of course, welcome to not follow me or unfollow me or whatever. That's up to you. Just wanted to give you the heads up that I do stream. Sometimes I stream game stuff, and sometimes I stream other random things. And I may stream for other classes too in the future. So just FYI. Okay, so this is me kind of wrapping things up. Kind of slowing down in case people have any questions. I'm kind of lingering a little bit here. But this is probably, if you're a student in the class, it's probably not the last time you'll see me. I am doing more videos, and I will probably do videos for your final, to respond to your final stuff as well. I've got 3 more to do for week 4, and then some of you will, I assume, still be submitting things that I haven't seen yet. And once I do see those, then I will use videos to give you all feedback on that as well. All right, well, I think I want to wrap things up then. I don't see anyone commenting, so I'm going to go ahead and switch on the background music and fade things over here and wrap things up. So thanks for watching, and I hope you're doing well. Have a good day.
Have just begun. We will always take